So picture this for a second. You are standing right in the center of this sloping, shell-shaped medieval piazza.
Oh, I can already feel the heat just thinking about it.
Right. It is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the temperature is hovering right around 96 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 36 degrees Celsius.
And that heat radiating up through the soles of your shoes from the ancient brickwork, I mean, it's literally intense enough to blur the horizon line.
Exactly. You are completely crammed in there alongside thousands of other people. But get this. The local authorities have explicitly forbidden you from holding a water bottle with a cap on it.
Which, sounds completely insane in the middle of a brutal Italian summer.
It sounds like a cruel, arbitrary rule. But that plastic cap, if you drop it, becomes this lethal slipping hazard.
Yeah, because you've got 10 bareback horses about to thunder past you over this really thin layer of imported dirt.
At speeds that completely defy the narrow confines of the architecture. You are entirely at the mercy of the environment, the heat, and, well, a centuries-old tradition.
And the physical intensity of that scenario is really what defines this specific time of year in Italy.
It really is.
Like, tourists expect this leisurely vacation, but the environment demands a kind of submission to the elements.
Yeah, you are suddenly participating in a living mechanism that operates by rules established way before modern tourism even existed. And stepping into those living mechanisms is exactly what we are doing today. Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive, where we're opening up the ultimate insider's guide to Italy in July. Yes, and actually, before we go any further, we need to establish the pronunciation of that name. It's Dolcevia.
Right.
So think of the famous Italian phrase dolce vita, representing the sweet life, but simply drop the T. Dolcevia.
I love that. It signifies traveling a better, smarter way, just deeply injected with that authentic sweet life.
Exactly. And this deep dive serves as your dedicated audio companion to the What's On in Italy guide.
Right, which relies on the meticulous research of Elizabeth Jane Bertrand. She's the chief editor and the producer of this series.
So what we have in front of us is not, a passive list of calendar dates or some tourism board marketing spiel.
Definitely not. We're taking her extensive cultural mapping, cross-referencing it with crucial fact checks for the 2026 season, and really extracting the underlying forces that make Italy operate the way it does during one of its most extreme months.
And we really have to analyze the physical reality of that extremity. Because July in Italy isn't just warm. It's this dense, oppressive heat that fundamentally alters human behavior.
It really does. When you're standing in a stone-paved city like Rome or Florence, the urban architecture actually traps and amplifies the solar radiation.
Yeah, the stone just absorbs the heat all day and radiates it back out at you. That 36 degrees Celsius high isn't just a number on a weather app.
No, it is a physical weight. It dictates every single decision you make.
So the thermodynamics of those ancient cities force a complete rewiring of the Italian lifestyle. You just do not fight a Mediterranean midday sun.
You can't, and the entire culture understands this biological reality. So instead of operating on a standard 9-to-5 schedule, the country effectively shifts its metabolic energy to the margins of the day.
I love how you put that. The society blossoms at dawn, retreats into the shadows during the peak solar hours, and then, revives fiercely at dusk.
Exactly, extending its life deep into the night.
It's kind of like the way a photographic darkroom operates, right? The blinding light of the enlarger bleaches everything out.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Like if you walk through the Roman Forum at noon, the glare of the sun just washes away the nuance of the ruins. You are literally just trying to survive the exposure.
Yeah, but when the sun dips below the horizon, or in that crisp, cool window just before dawn, the chemical bath of the atmosphere changes.
The shadows elongate, the temperature finally drops, and the sharp, high-contrast reality of local life finally develops and reveals itself.
And that environmental pressure is really the catalyst for the events we're exploring today.
Right.
While the midday heat drives the casual observer into the shade or into, air-conditioned hotel rooms, it paradoxically fuels the most intense, deeply rooted local community rituals.
Because the festivals that happen in July are not historical reenactments staged for an audience.
No, they are binding, breathing obligations. They're expressions of survival and identity that would occur even if the city gates were locked and no visitors were allowed inside.
Which brings us directly back to the piazza we started in, the Palio of Siena, specifically the Palio di Provenzano, which detonates on July 2nd.
Detonates is the right word.
There is this common assumption, especially if you just see a 15-second video clip online, that this is the medieval European equivalent of the Kentucky Derby.
Right. It looks like a horse race designed to sell tickets, fill hotel rooms, and generate revenue.
But categorizing the Palio as a sport or a tourist attraction is a massive misunderstanding of Sienese sociology. The Palio is a defining civic religion.
Completely. The city of Siena is divided into 17 historical districts, known as contrade. And these are not just neighborhoods.
No, they are essentially independent microstates within the city. You are born into a contrada, you are baptized into its fountain, and you pay yearly dues to support its infrastructure.
So the horse race, which lasts, a chaotic 90 seconds?
Yeah, literally a minute and a half.
It is merely the explosive kinetic release of a year-long, intense societal pressure cooker.
To really understand that pressure, we have to look at the shadows of July 1st, the night before the race. Out of the 17 contrade, only 10 are randomly drawn to compete in any given palio.
And if you walk into one of those 10 competing districts on the eve of the race, the sheer scale of the preparation is staggering. They execute the propitiatory dinners.
Right. They take the main artery of their district, like a curving cobblestone street, and transform it into this impossibly long, continuous banquet table.
The logistics of feeding thousands of people on an inclined medieval street require military-level coordination by the contrada members.
And these dinners, they are designed to essentially bend reality through collective willpower.
I mean, you have thousands of contradaioli, the members of the district, eating, drinking, and chanting the exact same traditional songs that were used to bless their randomly assigned horse inside their local church earlier that afternoon.
They are actively attempting to generate a critical mass of luck. It is a fiercely internal, closed-loop community event.
Yeah. And while a meticulously planned approach through official district channels might secure a guest a seat, the dinner does not exist for the guest.
Not at all. It exists entirely to solidify their internal bloodline.
And the culmination of that psychological buildup on July 2nd is why the rules in the Piazza del Campo are so unyielding.
The physical toll of being a spectator in the center of the piazza is severe. You must be inside the gates by late afternoon. The heat radiating off the bricks is suffocating.
And the restrictions, no children under 10, no stools, no dogs, and absolutely no lids on water bottles, they speak to the inherent danger of what is about to happen.
Because you are standing on the inside of a treacherous, angled dirt track.
And the dirt itself is a crucial element. They import a specific mixture of tough clay and sand to lay over the stone, banking the tight corners like the infamous curve of San Martino.
But it is still a temporary surface. 10 horses are ridden bareback.
And the jockeys are equipped with whips made of ox sinew, which, get this, they are legally permitted to use not just on their own horses, but on rival jockeys and rival horses.
It's wild. The centrifugal force on those corners frequently throws riders straight into the padded walls.
Which brings up the most fascinating counterintuitive rule of the entire event. A jockey is entirely expendable.
Yes, if a rider is violently thrown from his mount on the first lap, the race does not stop.
That is the rule of the cavallo scosso, the shaken horse. The loyalty, the blessing, and the honor of the district are vested in the animal carrying their colors, not the hired mercenary riding it.
So, if a riderless horse manages to complete the 3 laps of the 1,000-meter track and crosses the finish line first with its head ornament, the spinachiera, still intact on its bridle, that horse wins.
The district claims the Drappellone, the highly coveted painted silk canvas trophy, and the entire contrada just erupts into weeks of euphoric celebration.
That level of intensity in a highly structured, wealthy Tuscan city is incredible. But I want to take us to a completely different geological and cultural landscape now.
Okay, let's go.
We are leaving the manicured urban environment of Siena and moving to a dusty, rugged, exposed hillside in Sardinia. On July 6th and 7th, the small village of Sedillo hosts l'Ardia di San Costantino.
Wow, talk about a shift. If Siena is about municipal pride and structured civic rivalry, this event in Sardinia is about raw, unfiltered spiritual survival.
The contrast in the physical environment totally dictates the nature of the ritual. Sedillo is a town of roughly 3,000 people, but during the Ardia, the arid landscape suddenly absorbs up to 50,000 pilgrims.
Yeah, and this is not a sanitized 21st century parade. It is widely acknowledged as one of Italy's most inherently dangerous religious festivals.
Just the etymology of the word ardia comes from the verb bardiere, which translates to guarding or protecting.
And the history they are protecting requires a massive leap backward in time, specifically to the Roman Emperor Constantine.
Right. We were talking about the Battle of Milvian Bridge in 312 AD, the military victory that essentially ended the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire.
It is so fascinating how the geopolitical shifts of late antiquity were absorbed and localized by this isolated Sardinian community, to the point where Constantine isn't just a historical figure, he is venerated locally as a saint, Santuantine.
And the entire festival is a visceral, dust-choked reenactment of that defense of the faith. The psychology of the participants is entirely focused on the existential weight of that history.
You have roughly 100 horsemen gathering on the hillside overlooking the sanctuary. But the focal point rests entirely on 3 specific riders who were chosen to carry the standards, the pandelas.
The selection process for those standard bearers is a testament to the gravity of the event. A rider doesn't just sign up for this on a whim.
No. The parish priest maintains a secret, closely guarded register. Men place their names on this list and often wait decades, just aging into the role, for the singular honor of carrying Suprema Pandela.
The first flag, which directly represents Constantine, they are literally waiting their entire adult lives to risk profound physical injury.
Because if the first flag falls, or, more importantly, if it is overtaken by the other riders representing the pagan forces, it is viewed as a catastrophic symbolic failure.
It represents the hypothetical fall of Christianity itself. Therefore, the rider carrying Constantine's standard must launch his horse down an incredibly steep, uneven dirt track, navigating a treacherous path through a narrow stone archway, all while maintaining the lead.
And the auditory start of this race is terrifying. There is no starting bell or organized gate.
Oh man, the tension on the hillside builds until riflemen suddenly fire blank rounds into the hot summer air.
The sharp crack of the rifles triggers a massive, panicked adrenaline spike in the horses, and the charge begins instantly.
The dust clouds kicked up by 100 galloping horses entirely obscure the track. The noise, the heat, the genuine threat of being trampled, it strips away any illusion of this being a performance.
It is a collective physical prayer. And we see variations of this aggressive physical processing of devotion throughout the South in July.
For instance?
Well, on July 2nd, the city of Matera in the Basilicata region executes the Festa della Bruna. This is a ritual that has been continuously observed since 1389.
Wow.
And it takes the concept of devotion and ties it directly to cyclical destruction.
The mechanics of the Festa della Bruna are uniquely cathartic because for months, local artisans work meticulously to construct an enormous, highly ornate triumphal chariot out of papier-mâché.
Right, it is this stunning piece of temporary architecture designed to carry the statue of the Madonna through the streets. But the beauty of the chariot is entirely secondary to its ultimate purpose.
Exactly. The climax of the festival occurs in Piazza Vittorio Veneto. Once the religious procession concludes and the statue is safely removed, the chariot is literally surrendered to the crowd.
In a chaotic, violent surge known as the strozzo, the townspeople physically tear the massive chariot to pieces.
They rip apart the papier-mâché angels and the ornate structural beams with their bare hands. Every single person desperately tries to secure a fragmented piece of the chariot to take home.
Because they believe it holds protective, blessing properties for the coming year.
And that destruction is a profound psychological mechanism. It levels the societal playing field. Everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status the rest of the year, is fighting shoulder to shoulder for a scrap of blessed paper.
It also represents the agricultural necessity of destroying the old harvest to make way for the new.
Now, Matera processes history through the violent destruction of a physical object, but I want to move us north to Venice, where they process a different kind of historical trauma through the construction of temporary infrastructure.
Let's look at the Festa del Redentore on July 18th and 19th.
The juxtaposition of Matera's dust and Venice's water is striking, but the underlying drive is identical: survival.
Today, Redentore is globally recognized for its extravagant fireworks display over the lagoon. But the aesthetic beauty of the night masks a deeply traumatic origin. The festival was born in 1577 out of sheer desperation.
Right, the urban density of Renaissance Venice made it incredibly vulnerable to disease. They had just endured a catastrophic outbreak of the bubonic plague that wiped out roughly 50,000 people.
That was an apocalyptic percentage of their population. I mean, the famous painter Titian died in that outbreak. The city was hemorrhaging life.
And so the Doge made a desperate vow to the heavens. If the plague broke, he would commission a magnificent church as a permanent monument of thanksgiving.
The plague subsided, and the Doge honored that vow by hiring Andrea Palladio, arguably the most influential architect of the Renaissance, to design the Church of Il Redentore.
But Palladio built it on Giudecca Island, which is separated from the main historical center of Venice by the Giudecca Canal.
And this is a wide, deep, heavily trafficked body of water with strong tidal currents.
This geographical reality forced an engineering solution that has become the defining visual of the festival. Every single year since 1577, the city undertakes the immense logistical challenge of building a temporary pontoon bridge.
They align a massive fleet of barges side by side entirely across the canal. They lay wooden planks across the decks, essentially constructing a floating highway that connects the Zetter directly to the steps of Palladio's church.
The engineering required to stabilize a temporary pedestrian bridge on a tidal lagoon, ensuring it can support the weight of a massive, solemn procession walking on foot across the water, is a marvel in itself.
It's incredible. It allows the spiritual core of the city to physically cross a boundary that is normally impassable without a boat.
But the way the modern Venetian citizens interact with this history is where the true character of the city shines. On Saturday night, July 18th, St. Mark's Basin undergoes a complete transformation.
Hundreds, maybe thousands of private boats flood the basin. But this isn't, a chaotic traffic jam.
No, Venetians meticulously decorate their vessels with garlands, lanterns, and balloons. They construct elaborate dining tables right on the wooden decks of their boats.
You have entire multi-generational families bobbing on the gentle swells of the lagoon, eating traditional dishes like sard and sore, those sweet and sour sardines, while waiting for the heat of the day to finally dissipate.
They are utilizing the thermal mass of the water to escape the suffocating humidity of the narrow alleys.
And as the sky turns pitch black, the city detonates an hour of some of the most complex, choreographically advanced fireworks in the world.
The concussions echo off the facades of the Doge's Palace in San Giorgio Maggiore, while the reflections double the light show on the surface of the water.
But the Dulcevia research files highlight a specific quiet coda to this explosive night that really captures the essence of July.
Oh, this is my favorite part. When the fireworks end and the smoke slowly drifts out toward the Adriatic, the younger Venetians don't go home to sleep.
No, they take their smaller motorboats, navigate through the dark channels, and head out to the Lido, the long barrier island that protects the lagoon from the open sea.
They pull their boats onto the sand, sit on the beach, and simply wait out the remaining hours of darkness to watch the sunrise over the Adriatic Sea.
That transition from the noise of the basin to the silence of the beach perfectly illustrates the cultural shift we discussed earlier.
They evade the oppressive reality of the daytime sun by extending their social existence completely through the night, synchronizing their celebration with the cooling shift in the atmosphere right up to the first light of dawn.
The Venetians use the water to mitigate the environment. But that brings us to the next profound strategy the Italians employ in July.
Right, because if they aren't using water, they use ancient stone.
Exactly. They take their highest forms of art, specifically world-class symphonic and operatic music, pull it out of the stuffy, velvet-lined concert halls, and place it directly into the open air at the edges of the day.
Which takes us to part 2 of our deep dive, the music festivals, and specifically the echoes of antiquity.
Because Italy possesses a staggering infrastructural advantage when it comes to open-air acoustics. They don't need to build temporary scaffolding in a field.
No, they simply repurpose the monumental engineering of the Roman Empire.
And the undisputed king of these venues is the Verona Arena. The 2026 season marks their 103rd edition, running a massive schedule from June 12th all the way through September 12th.
Sitting inside that structure forces a massive perspective showed. You are occupying a limestone amphitheater constructed in the 1st century AD.
Right, originally designed for the brutal acoustics of gladiatorial combat and crowd control.
And the physics of that space are what make it one of the premier operatic stages on Earth. The Romans utilized a specific pink limestone from the nearby Valpolicella region.
The density of that stone, combined with the precise, sweeping elliptical shape of the seating tiers, creates an environment with almost zero acoustic dead zones.
The sound waves generated by a singer down on the stage bounce off the curved stone gradients and travel upward with minimal distortion.
The result is that 15,000 people can sit under the night sky and hear a human voice perfectly, without a single microphone or speaker.
It's mind-blowing. When a soprano hits a high note in Verona, the sound hitting your eardrum is entirely unassisted by modern electronics. It is the pure physical manipulation of air pressure interacting with 2,000-year-old masonry.
However, engaging with 2,000-year-old masonry requires physical preparation.
Oh, yes. The seating in the Gradinata, the unnumbered upper tiers of the arena, consists of raw, sun-baked stone steps.
Sitting on that rigid surface for a 3-hour opera will rapidly compromise your lower back.
Yeah.
Bringing a specialized cushion is not a luxury. It is a strict physical necessity.
That is exactly the kind of highly practical intelligence Elizabeth Jane Bertrand includes in the Dulcivia Files.
Absolutely.
Now, contrasting that ancient acoustic purity, the 2026 Verona season is actively pushing the boundaries of the space. They are mounting an immersive, multi-sensory production of Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
They are taking a Baroque masterpiece, injecting it into an Imperial Roman structure, and applying 21st century immersive technology. It is a massive chronological collision.
And that concept of chronological collision is actually the defining theme for the Tiro dell'Opera di Roma's 2026 summer season as well. But they are achieving it through a significant logistical pivot.
This is a massive update from the fact-check files.
Right. If you rely on institutional memory or old travel guides, you would assume the Rome Opera is holding its summer season at the Terme di Carcalla.
The ruins of those 3rd century imperial bathhouses have been their traditional summer home for decades.
But for 2026, running from June 29th to July 31st, they have officially uprooted the main stage and moved it directly into the Circus Maximus.
Moving from the towering brick walls of the Baths of Caracalla to the open, elongated valley of the Circus Maximus fundamentally alters the acoustic and visual scale of the performances.
Because the Circus Maximus is the ancient chariot racing stadium situated between the Palatine and Aventine Hills, it does not have the vertical acoustic containment of the baths.
Instead, it offers an impossibly vast, sprawling canvas.
And the programming reflects that massive scale. On July 3rd and 4th, they are leaning directly into the ghosts of the space.
They are hosting a massive cinematic screening of the movie Gladiator, accompanied by a live symphony orchestra executing the score in real time.
You are sitting on the exact dirt where ancient Roman charioteers actually bled and died, watching a Hollywood interpretation of that history, scored by a live orchestra.
It is the ultimate synthesis of pop culture scale and authentic historical geography.
If we shift our focus from the monumental scale of ancient Rome to the nuanced, deeply emotional landscape of more recent musical history, July also delivers the 72nd Puccini Festival.
Yes. This takes place in Tuscany, specifically in the town of Torre del Lago, running from July 17th to September 5th.
Torre del Lago is uniquely intimate compared to the Circus Maximus. This theater sits right on the marshy shores of Lake Massatukli.
Giacomo Puccini actually lived here. He hunted in the reeds of this lake, and the atmospheric mist rolling off the water directly influenced the haunting orchestrations of his operas.
But the 2026 season carries immense historical weight. It marks the centenary of his final, famously unfinished masterpiece, Turandot.
And the Dulcivia research notes revealed a detail about this centenary production that forced me to reread the page.
The director chosen for this monumental staging of Turandot is Jackie Chan.
Wait, really? The initial reaction to that pairing is often disbelief. Mixing a legendary Hong Kong martial artist and action director with the high art of Italian opera seems totally incongruous.
But when you analyze the mechanics of the opera itself, it becomes a brilliant tactical choice. Turandot is set in a mythical imperial China.
Right. It is visually demanding, requiring massive crowd control on stage, intricate blocking, and sudden bursts of intense dramatic action.
Exactly. Jackie Chan is an undisputed master of kinetic spatial awareness. He is bringing a high-impact visual system to the stage.
We are talking about incorporating martial arts-inspired choreography into the movements of the chorus, utilizing massive cinematic video projections and integrating atmospheric stage effects that mimic the grand scale of cinema.
He is essentially mapping cinematic action physics onto operatic diaphragm control. The singers must execute incredibly difficult vocal passages while navigating a highly dynamic, physically demanding stage environment.
It perfectly bridges Puccini's expansive, internationally focused artistic vision with his quiet, deeply rooted Tuscan origins. Furthermore, the environmental timing of the festival is deeply strategic.
Right, the curtain does not rise until 9:15 p.m.
Which allows the audience to sit in the open-air theater and literally watch the sunset over the exact waters that inspired the music, letting the heat bleed out of the air before the first note is played.
Now, the open-air acoustic magic of July isn't restricted to classical music and opera. The modern amplified beat is incredibly powerful, utilizing different historical architectures.
Let's examine Umbria Jazz, which completely takes over the hill town of Perugia from July 3rd to the 12th.
Perugia is a dense, vertical medieval city. During the festival, the urban layout effectively turns into a series of cascading, open-air stages.
You have musicians playing free concerts from noon to midnight in the historic piazzas, where the sound bounces wildly off the tight, irregular stone alleys.
However, the heavy acoustic lifting, the massive amplified sound, is directed to the main stage at the Arena Santa Giuliana.
And the 2026 lineup, pulling focus to that arena, is massive. You have Sting performing on July 3rd, the incredible polymath John Batiste on the 5th, and Elvis Costello on the 12th.
But this brings up a critical point about navigating the digital landscape when planning travel, specifically regarding the Lucca Summer Festival, which runs in Tuscany from June 24th to July 29th.
This is a crucial warning regarding algorithmic echoes. The internet frequently recirculates outdated festival posters and articles without context.
If a traveler relies on an unverified search result, they risk making catastrophic logistical errors.
The Dulcivia fact checks are incredibly clear on this.
Yeah.
If you booked your 2026 flights to Lucca based on a poster advertising Ed Sheeran or Rod Stewart playing inside the medieval walls, you are going to be deeply disappointed.
Yeah, they headlined the 2024 edition.
Accuracy in these details is paramount. The actual 2026 lineup for Lucca, however, is a brilliant juxtaposition of modern pop and funk against Renaissance military architecture.
Jamiroquai, John Legend, and Katy Perry are slated to perform. The acoustics of Lucca are unique because the massive, wide, earthen-filled brick walls that encircle the city act as an enormous acoustic baffle,
containing the heavy bass of a pop concert and preventing it from dissipating into the surrounding Tuscan plains.
The military engineering of the 1500s perfectly sieving the audio engineering of 2026. I find that fascinating.
It really is.
But I want to pivot our attention to what might be the true sensory peak of the July music scene. We've talked about cities and lakes, but the real magic happens at the absolute extremes of geography and time.
We are talking about high altitudes and the precise moment of dawn.
The Next Stones Festival, running from July 16th to the 19th, is the perfect example of geographical extremism. Located in the Piedmont region, high up in the Ossola Valley, this is an experimental electronic and audiovisual festival.
But the genre of music is almost secondary to the radical nature of the venue itself.
They hold the festival inside a massive, raw, stripped-out alpine granite quarry. It is officially called the Tones Nature Open Air Theater.
We analyzed the delicate acoustics of Verona's limestone, but this is the polar opposite. This is the acoustic weaponization of sheer granite walls.
Granite is incredibly dense and reflective. When you introduce heavy, low-frequency electronic bass into a carved-out void in the Alps, the sound waves do not absorb into the rock, they ricochet violently.
The visual component is equally extreme. They project massive, hallucinatory laser and video mapping arrays directly onto the sheer rock faces.
You are standing in the cold mountain air, surrounded by the raw industrial scars of the earth, experiencing intensely modern electronic music. It is an overwhelming sensory bombardment.
And from the industrial intensity of the Alps, we swing the pendulum entirely to the south, to the Amalfi Coast, for an event that requires a very different kind of physical endurance.
The Ravello Festival opens on July 4th. The programming is spectacular, but it famously demands a significant alteration of your circadian rhythm.
The signature event, the Dawn Concert, doesn't actually happen until August 11th, but the July programming establishes the identical environment of extremely late nights pushing into early mornings.
The concept of a dawn concert often confuses people accustomed to traditional schedules. Why would anyone on a luxury vacation force themselves to wake up at 3:30 in the morning, navigate winding coastal roads in the dark, just to sit and listen to a symphony orchestra?
The answer lies in the profound psychological effect of synchronizing music with planetary movement. You are sitting on the cantilevered terrace of Villa Ruffalo, suspended hundreds of feet in the air above the Mediterranean Sea.
When you arrive, the environment is a sensory void. It is pitch black. The air is cool. You can't see the water, but you can hear the waves crashing against the cliffs far below.
The orchestra takes the stage in the darkness, illuminated only by small standlights.
And as the first sustained, quiet notes from the string section begin, the horizon subtly shifts. The psychological impact of watching the physical world reveal itself while surrounded by complex orchestrations cannot be overstated.
The Mediterranean slowly transitions from a heavy ink-black mass to deep purple. The sky lightens to a pale pink, and exactly as the symphony builds toward its crescendo, the sun breaks the horizon line, turning the sea into a blinding, vibrant blue.
The temperature physically drops just before the sun rises, sending a chill across the terrace, and then the warmth hits your face perfectly in time with the music.
It is a total sensory reset that is physically impossible to replicate in an enclosed, air-conditioned theater at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
It justifies every second of lost sleep. But maintaining that level of cultural stamina, staying up all night in quarries or waking up before dawn on the coast requires immense caloric energy.
Which seamlessly integrates into the most vital aspect of Italian culture, the food systems that support this lifestyle.
In July, engaging with the culinary landscape is not just about finding a good restaurant, it is about navigating the agricultural calendar and the aggressive summer temperatures.
This brings us to the food festivals, the hyper-local sagre, and the tactical intelligence required to escape the heat.
The sagre are the absolute bedrock of regional Italian identity. They are incredibly specific, hyper-local festivals dedicated to celebrating the harvest or production of a single, highly specialized ingredient.
July is the ignition point for the sagre season. Let's examine a culinary heavyweight, the Napoli Pizza Village. This runs from July 7th to the 12th.
Naples is the undisputed global epicenter of pizza, but organizing a festival that involves dozens of massive wood-fired ovens operating at 900 degrees Fahrenheit in the middle of a southern Italian summer presents an enormous thermodynamic challenge.
Which is why the Dolcivia fact-check on the 2026 venue is so critical. Historically, this massive event was held inland at the Mostra d'Oltremare Exhibition Center.
If you show up there this year, you will find an empty concrete lot. The organizers executed a brilliant logistical pivot.
The entire village has been relocated westward, out of the dense city center, to the Lungomare Pertini waterfront in the town of Pozzuoli.
Pozzuoli sits in the Campi Flegrei, a massive volcanic caldera. By moving the massive infrastructure of the festival to the coastal promenade, they are harnessing the natural, cooling sea breeze coming off the Gulf of Pozzuoli.
The heat generated by the dense cluster of wood-fired ovens is immediately dispersed over the water.
This allows visitors to comfortably engage with the massive masterclasses, the dough-stretching exhibitions, and the tastings without succumbing to heat exhaustion.
It is a masterclass in adapting to the environment. We see a similar reliance on the cooling effects of the coast way down south in Sicily.
Between July 2nd and 5th, the incredibly picturesque fishing village of Marzamemi hosts the Bluefish Festival. This isn't just a seafood tasting menu. It is an anthropological deep dive into the Tanara system.
The Tanara is the ancient, highly complex system of nets used to intercept the migration routes of bluefin tuna as they move through the Mediterranean.
Marzamemi's entire architecture and history are built around this specific maritime harvest. The festival celebrates the historical, economic, and culinary impact of that intense relationship with the sea,
allowing you to taste preparations of tuna that have been refined in that specific village for centuries.
Or, if your culinary preferences lean away from the sea and toward the complex chemistry of fermented grapes, you can head to the hills of Tuscany. From July 20th to the 26th, the town of Montalcino hosts its Jazz and Wine Festival.
The mechanics of this event rely on the thermal mass of medieval stone. You're sitting inside the walls of a massive, elevated 14th century fortress.
The fixed stone walls block the lingering evening heat, creating a cool microclimate where you can comfortably analyze the complex, heavy tannins of a world-class Brunello di Montalcino while listening to international jazz artists.
However, navigating the Sagre calendar requires absolute precision, because missing a date by a few days means missing the entire harvest cycle.
This brings up another critical warning from the research files regarding outdated travel blogs.
The internet is littered with aggregated, unchecked lists of things to do in Italy in July. A prime example of this trap involves the beautiful town of Ascoli Piceno in the Marche region.
Ascoli Piceno is globally famous for olive alla scalana, massive green olives that are pitted, stuffed with a complex mixture of slow-roasted meats, breaded, and deep-fried.
The festival dedicated to this masterpiece is called Ascoliva. Countless old articles list Ascoliva as a July event.
If you drove across the country in mid-July anticipating a mountain of fried olives, you would find nothing. In 2026, Ascoliva does not begin until August 9th.
This is why the curated intelligence of Dolcivia is essential. You cannot simply trust a search engine.
However, the beauty of the Italian cultural density is that a missed culinary event often overlaps with a spectacular historical one.
Exactly. Because if you were standing in Ascoli Piceno in July looking for olives, you would unexpectedly find yourself in the middle of the Quintana.
On July 11th, the city executes a massive, historically rigorous medieval joust in the Campo Squarcia. It involves hundreds of citizens in painstakingly accurate 15th century armor and velvet, culminating in a highly competitive, dangerous equestrian tournament.
The culture provides, even if the specific food you wanted is a month away.
This brings us to the most crucial, pragmatic advice we can extract from the environmental data in our sources. How does a visitor actually survive the peak intensity of the July furnace if they aren't willing to become entirely nocturnal?
The physics of the Italian summer leave you with two primary tactical escapes: altitude and schedule inversion. Let's analyze altitude first.
Okay, altitude.
It comes down to the adiabatic lapse rate. As a general rule of atmospheric physics, the temperature drops roughly 1 degree Celsius, or roughly 2 degrees Fahrenheit, for every 100 meters you ascend in elevation.
So if you want a vacation that involves aggressive outdoor physical activity in July without risking heat stroke, you must abandon the plains and head north to the Dolomites.
The jagged limestone peaks of the Alps offer a high-altitude hiker's paradise where the ambient temperature remains entirely manageable.
But altitude tactics apply even if you are staying in central Italy. If you are renting a historic villa in Tuscany or Umbria, you must look closely at a topographical map before you book.
Do not rent a beautiful stone farmhouse that sits at the bottom of a bowl-shaped valley. The cool air drains out and the heat stagnates.
You need to verify that your lodging sits at least 600 meters above sea level. That specific elevation threshold is where the nighttime air finally cools enough to provide physical relief from the daytime accumulation of heat.
If you are geographically locked into the low-lying cities or the coast, your only remaining weapon is schedule inversion. You must unlearn your instinct to maximize every daylight hour.
I cannot emphasize this forcefully enough. Entering the unshaded ruins of Pompeii or the exposed gravel paths of the Roman Forum at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in July is a massive tactical error.
There is zero tree cover. The ancient stones act as an oven. You will not absorb the profound history of the Roman Empire. Your brain will only register the biological panic of intense sweating and dehydration.
You must adopt the biological pacing of the locals. When the sun peaks, you retreat. You close the heavy wooden shutters on your windows, blocking the radiant heat, and you rest in the dark.
You conserve your metabolic energy. You wait for the sun to drop, and then you execute your exploration in the evening.
The Dulcivia sources highly recommend shifting your cultural engagement to the nighttime. Book an evening street food tour in the alleys of Palermo or along the cliffs of Sorrento.
You step out at 8 o'clock at night. The sea breeze has kicked in, flushing the hot air out of the narrow streets.
The cafes throw open their doors, the lights streaming across the piazzas turn on, and you interact with the city exactly when it is most alive.
Which brings us in a perfect conceptual circle back to our friends in the dust of Sardinia at the Ardia Festival in Sicily.
Yes. Think about the timeline of that event. The chaotic, profoundly dangerous horse race honoring Constantine happens in the punishing heat of the late afternoon.
But when the dust finally settles and the adrenaline crashes, the village doesn't shut down. They transition into the cool of the night for the communal reward.
The entire community gathers under the stars for massive feasts. The culinary focal point is parsidou, the iconic Sardinian preparation of suckling pig, slowly roasted over open wood fires until the skin blisters and the fat renders perfectly.
And they pair that rich, heavy meat with vernaccia.
And vernaccia isn't just a generic white wine. It is a deeply complex, amber-colored wine produced in the Oristano area using techniques that date back roughly 3,000 years.
The amber color comes from a deliberate, controlled oxidation process inside the barrel, creating a high-alcohol, incredibly resilient wine that tastes like almonds and sea salt.
They sit in the dark, eating roasted meat, drinking 3,000-year-old oxidized wine, and celebrating the fact that they survived another year, another race, and another brutal summer day.
And that communal survival, that joyous resilience in the dark, is the ultimate synthesis of the entire month.
So if we zoom out from the specific details, from the crushed papier-mâché in Matera to the laser projections bouncing off alpine granite, from the acoustic purity of a Roman amphitheater to the logistical brilliance of moving a pizza festival to the sea, what does this massive collection of data actually tell us about the underlying nature of Italy?
I believe July reveals an Italian culture that absolutely refuses to allow the harsh, oppressive realities of the environment to dictate or diminish its passion.
Right.
A lesser, more pragmatic culture faced with 36-degree heat would simply surrender. They would cancel the outdoor events, retreat into heavily air-conditioned spaces, and wait passively for the autumn cool to return.
Italy fundamentally rejects that surrender. Instead, the culture weaponizes its own architecture and alters its biological rhythms to adapt.
It creates a fiercely theatrical nocturnal lifestyle. The heat does not extinguish the fire of their traditions. It merely forces that fire into the shadows, into the early dawns and the late nights, where it burns with even more intensity.
It pushes the life into the shadows. That is a brilliant way to frame it. And that observation leaves me with a final, lingering thought for you to consider long after we wrap up this Dulcivia deep dive.
Oh, I'm ready.
Throughout this journey, we have constantly discussed how the physical spaces manipulate the events within them. We've looked at raw granite quarries, weaponized for electronic bass, the elliptical sweep of 2,000-year-old limestone amplifying a soprano, and the engineering of temporary floating bridges altering the flow of a city.
It forces us to confront the invisible power of our surroundings.
Precisely. It makes you wonder, how much does the sheer physical architecture of a place actually dictate the type of art and the type of community that manages to survive there?
If the Verona Arena had been built out of a softer, less resonant stone, would the opera festival still feel like a transcendent religious experience, or would it have faded away decades ago?
Next time you put on headphones to listen to your favorite album, or the next time you walk into a local festival in your own hometown, take a moment to look at the walls, the streets, and the sky.
Ask yourself how the physical geometry of the space around you is secretly, quietly shaping your entire emotional experience of the art.
That is a lens that changes how you view every city you ever visit.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you for immersing yourself in this journey through the intense, shadowy reality of July.
Until next time.
Stay curious and remember to look for the life happening at the margins of the day.